Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Masseri, here with Mike Bunt to talk about the game of the year, Bills, Bengals. So much on the line. The one seed's on the line. There is a lot of storylines. What is this Bengals offense going to look like without their right tackle? What's going to go? Is Hayden Hurst going to? But there's so much to talk about in what key matchups we're going to focus on, and we can't wait to do it. But we'll be right back with you from the Going Deep podcast.
Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop, deep throw, and it is hauled in for the touchdown. Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown. Play action. Allen, deep downfield, wide open.
You are now listening to the Going Deep podcast with your hosts, Kevin Masseri and Mike Bunt, live from the Cover One Sports Network. Here we go.
Whew, Mike, what a day, what a
You are
day,
now
what a
listening
game.
to the Going
Coming
Deep
this-
podcast.
Coming
with your
soon,
host,
Mike. I cannot wait for this game. What an intro drop that we have as well. Just wanted to keep it going a little bit longer, I guess. But coming off of a big Christmas Eve win, one that started slow, down at half, took care of business. They carry this into a much needed game against the Bengals to take care of everything they need to do to lock up that one seed. I've tweeted the stats all week and tweeted the probabilities and odds of each position group. We'll get into that a little bit. But first, Mike, how are you today and how was your holiday season?
Well, I'm doing a lot better today than I have been overall the past week. The holidays were enjoyable. I was able to get to my parents before the storm hit, so I was with my family the last 4.5 days, staying over at my parents' house. So that was good. It was kind of a bummer not to have my aunts and uncles, cousins around, but just like a lot of other people in Buffalo, had to deal with the storm. Was absolutely crazy here. With the wind, the snow, everything involved. And it seems like the area can't catch a break during the past month. Just a month ago, we had 6 feet. Now we're getting a once-in-a-generation blizzard. But other than that, things are getting better. Roads are starting to clear up. And there's a very big Bills game 6 days from now. So can't wait to be talking about the Bills and Bengals on Monday Night Football.
Some normalcy, right? Maybe the game we're calling it the game of the year for the Bills. I think it's easy to do with hindsight, right? There's many situations that maybe this game didn't mean as much. Hey, the Bengals did start to a rocky start this season. Maybe the Bills had things locked up. Maybe KC dropped a game, and this wouldn't mean a ton. But fortunately or unfortunately, no matter how you want to look at it, this game is definitely the game of the year. It's probably the game of the late season for the NFL. Definitely. One that they were hoping they would get with Monday Night Football. We always know the misses that Thursday night and Monday Night Football has with matchups. This isn't one of them. They actually scored right with this Week 17 game. Bills, Bengals, everything on the line. Depending on how you want to put it, whether they care about seeding, but it is an early playoff preview for the country and for everybody that, does Joe Burrow do enough to beat the Bills? Is he in that echelon? Is he better? Is he the one of the best in the league or not? Can the Bengals defense get it done? Looked rocky late in the game against New England last week. Fumble away from maybe fumbling that game away and really putting some pressure on their division odds, which they haven't locked up, Mike. So a lot of different avenues to talk about this game. And then losing Lyle Collins, their stud right tackle that they added to keep Burrow upright with an already lackluster offensive line. So, Mike, as you kind of look at this game just right off the top, what are your early indications, early feelings about how this game feels, how it's going to look? Are you looking at this game as just a tune-up? Is it super duper important for you? I guess tell me about your mindset and kind of how you're looking at it now, knowing the rosters that both of these teams will take into this game.
Yeah, early thought process. This game feels like a toss-up to me, a 50-50 game that could go either way. The Bengals got off to a rocky start to the season and had me doubting them for a little bit, wondering if last year's run was a fluke, but they've been playing great football the past couple months. They deserve to be in the conversation with the Chiefs and the Bills. And it is kind of ironic that early this year we were calling Chiefs versus Bills the game of the year. And then they probably did have at that time the best game of the year. Only to then have Bengals Chiefs be the next game of the year, have that game live up to the hype. And now you kind of finish it off with Cincinnati taking on the Bills. And if Buffalo wins this, they rightfully can call themselves the best team in the NFL. You would have taken down Cincinnati and Kansas City, owned the best record in the AFC, won both of those games on the road. So to me, a win by the Bills on Monday Night Football would solidify them as the best team in the NFL, just because the gauntlet that the AFC is a totally different level than what Philadelphia, Dallas, Minnesota are facing in the NFC, which is just much weaker overall. And then when we talk about this matchup, I am intrigued by a lot of things, because I feel like Cincinnati continues to evolve. I've made no secret about it. I believe Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's going to be in that class, I believe, for a long, long time. I've known who he is going back to when he was a freshman in high school, and a lot of similarities between what he was then and what he is now. Obviously, a lot younger and smaller back then, but he's always been a guy that has had incredible accuracy and amazing intelligence on a football field. And it's going to be quite the challenge for the Bills, and not just because of Jamar Chase, but you have T. Higgins, you have Boyd. The list of weapons this Bengals team has is very difficult to contain. So the Bills are going to have their best effort on Monday to get a victory, and we can go into why this is important in a minute. But there are a lot of reasons why this game is going to have critical importance to the Bills and their postseason going forward.
Yeah, and the Bills have obviously, we talked a lot about weather. I mean, they've had some crazy weather. Buffalo in general, we spent the early portion of the show kind of saying what had happened here in the Buffalo region and the unluckiness with weather. And that goes back to the Jets game. Obviously, in Chicago was just brutal cold, one of the coldest games ever played. This Monday in Cincinnati right now, clear, cloudy, 60 degrees right now.
60, really? Oh
yes.
My goodness.
So
wow.
From 60 to -20 in back-to-back weeks. Monday actually looks nicer than rain and 55 on Sunday. So by it being on Monday, it certainly looks like the Bills could get some decent late season weather there in Cincinnati, Ohio. So it's going to be there's a lot of days next week that could have been pretty bad. And Monday right now isn't one of them. We'll see what happens. Only 7 mile an hour winds. So that shouldn't be a factor at all. And a slight chance of rain at night. So we'll see if that portrays its way into Cincinnati next Monday night. So is looking decent. We'll see if it is rainy there for that kind of warm weather. Could that bring some precipitation? We'll have to see as we get a little bit closer to kickoff there. And, it is still 6 days away. So we're going to have to see how that develops on the weather front. But the Bills certainly don't have any luck there. They have won some of these weather games lately, which is a great improvement from last year, Mike, where they were dropping some of these element games, whether it was New England in Buffalo, whether it was the Colts game, which was poor. If Isaiah McKenzie unable to return kickoffs, it was a mess. So they're winning some of these cold weather, cold wind, snow, rain games that, apparently only haunt the Bills. So we're going to see that. Mike, I tweeted earlier today, I wanted to bring up the luck factor. The Bills are one of the unluckiest teams in the NFL with fumble recovery rates, with dropped interceptions, and a couple of different factors that go into that score as one of the unluckiest teams in the league, and still have only lost 3 games by a total of 8 points. So the Bills are hot themselves. This isn't just a hot Bengals team coming in after their poor start. winning a bunch in a row. They did lose to the Ravens. They're still in a battle week 8. This game actually helps them a little bit. They still need to win week 18, or they're the 5 seed. So there is they don't have their division locked up. The Bills, the AFC East was supposed to be down to the wire. The Bills are now multiple games up on everybody in the division to where it didn't even become a race. But Cincinnati is in that race with Baltimore to the point where they can drop it and still win that they have to win next week. So it's going to be an all-around huge game for Cincinnati with a lot on the plate for them, having to finish with not only the Bills, they got to go and get it done in Baltimore, Mike.
Yeah, it's far from a gimme. This is one of those scenarios where it's not likely, but if the Bills were to lose against Cincinnati, it's still possible the Bills could get the 1 seed. They would need, obviously, the Bengals to lose against the Ravens, which is possible, and they would need Kansas City to lose one of their final 2 games. That's the unlikely part because they're playing against a Denver team that literally played one of the most uninspired games I've ever seen on Christmas Day against the Rams, and then close out on the road against a Vegas team that has nothing to play for. So that's why it wouldn't seem to be something that would be probable. But when you look at how this game will set up the playoffs in the postseason, I think it's critical for the Bills to get a victory in this game and to get that top seed. And the main reason why it isn't the home field advantage. I know that's what a lot of people will point to when the top advantage to getting the 1 seed. I don't believe that's the case. To me, the top advantage is you get a bye to the second round. When you had 2 teams getting a bye, obviously it was a lot easier to get there. Now, when you're that 1 seed, that bye is crucial. That's 1 less week that you need to go up against a top tier opponent. In the AFC, the 5, 6, 7 seeds all have teams that can put up points. So unless the Jets or the Patriots somehow sneak in as a 7 seed, when you're going up against potentially Baltimore, the Chargers, or even the Dolphins, they all have elite quarterbacks. Not that those tier 1 guys, but those tier 2, and then maybe with Tua, you would say, depending on the day, tier 2, tier 3 quarterbacks that can put up 30 points on you. So to escape that in the first round is critical. But then the hope is that you can get Cincinnati and Kansas City on that 2-3 line, because what that sets up is a scenario where you can't play them until the AFC Championship. And if you do play them, you'll be playing them at home. So Greg, Kevin, and I were discussing this the other day. In that scenario, say somehow the 7th seed does upset Kansas City or Cincinnati in the first round. Well, then one of them just gets knocked off. And even if you play a tough 6 or 7, you'd rather take that than play Kansas City or Cincinnati down the line. And in the case that Kansas City and Cincinnati take care of business, you're most likely playing either Jacksonville or the Chargers or Baltimore in the second round to get to the AFC Championship. So to me, that's a much easier path than playing Kansas City or Cincinnati in the second round. And if the Bills lose, there's a possibility you can drop to the 3 seed if Cincinnati wins out. And then next thing you know, you're potentially going back on the road in the second round like you did last year against Kansas City. And that's really not something that it feel unfortunate after how well the Bills have played all year. So it's crazy that after all these wins and putting all this incredible streak together, that a lot could be on the line in just this single game on Monday Night Football.
And as you kind of look at the ramifications of what could happen, there is a path to the 1 seed losing, as you said. However, per odds, it's about 20% chance of it happening. The odds have dipped greatly with a loss for the Bills to get the 1 seed. A couple weeks ago, the odds were at 50-50. Even losing a game, the Bills were in shape to be able to score the 1 seed. However, Ramondre Stevenson fumble last week, and a couple of other things. Denver not completing their comeback, Houston fumbling, and Davis Mills fumbling in overtime. A couple of those things have really pulled at the odds of the Bills getting the 1 seed. outside of a back-to-back win, setting up for 8 straight. Bill, I said this weeks and weeks ago, Mike. They needed 8 straight wins to score the 1 seed going into the playoffs. And then, obviously, from there, another 3 wins to win it all. 11 straight wins the Bills would have to be on to really secure the Super Bowl. Can they do it? That's what's really interesting about this scenario. And I like this point about why the 1 seed's critical. Now, the 1 seed hasn't been very lucky to the 1 seed with how they finish. Tennessee's dropped games. KC lost as the 1 seed. It doesn't always mean Super Bowl wins. How do you play next week specifically when you don't know if you're going to get the bye or not? That's an interesting point of conversation. So there's a lot that goes into that, but you get healthy. Do you see Micah Hyde at some point pop up? Do you see Jamison Crowder pop up? Are some of these injured players eligible with that extra week? Also, you do get to avoid KC or Cincy. You only would have to play one of them. You wouldn't have to play both. And obviously, all those games would be at home in that instance.
I think
so there are a lot of benefits.
I think the second point is the most important one. I know that typically a talking point is health, and health is obviously very important to making a run. But the avoiding KC or Cincy until the AFC Championship is the biggest thing, because the NFL is a game of matchups, and KC and Cincinnati are a tier above the entire rest of the AFC outside of the Bills. So you want to have an easier path to the AFC Championship. So that's number one to me. Number 2 would be the health. Number 3 is the home field / bye aspect, where you get a bye to the second round. And we'll just see how it ends up playing out. I think when you're talking about an actual home field advantage, where you're talking about the cold and how it gives the Bills an advantage or disadvantage against certain opponents, I don't really think that bad weather would really help out the Bills against teams like Cincy or Kansas City. We saw Cincy last year go on the road against Tennessee and win. We saw Cincinnati go on the road against Kansas City and win to get to the Super Bowl. So the Bengals have already proven they can play in difficult environments and come out victorious. Do they need to be a high scoring team? Well, not necessarily. When they played Tennessee and Kansas City, those were defensive battles that they won in the postseason last year. So since he can adjust their game depending on the opponent, and I feel the same with Kansas City, I don't think Mahomes playing in poor weather would really limit him. The teams that you would probably be talking about where Buffalo might have an advantage if the weather is poor, and this is grasping at straws at that, is potentially Miami if the weather was really bad, not just cold like we saw the last game. Maybe the LA Chargers. Obviously, Herbert, I believe, can play through it, but can some of the other guys on their team? Jacksonville would be an interesting situation, but we're really seeing great elite quarterback play on all of those teams outside of Miami in the fourth quarter against Green Bay. So with these teams that have solid quarterbacks, they can probably battle through it a little bit better. If you're taking on some of these weaker NFC teams and you're playing Washington or the Giants, yeah, you are looking for bad weather. There's no way that they could come in and keep up pace with the Bills, but there's some elite quarterback play. The one outlier would maybe be Lamar Jackson, just because the Bills have had strength, have been doing very well against mobile quarterbacks. And if Lamar is limited to where he can't put it in the air, assuming he's healthy in the playoffs, it could slow the Ravens down enough to where they might not be able to keep pace with you. But then again, they have other ways of trying to get on the board.
There's a lot to think of when you really dive into the system of who you're looking to face. And I love this topic. Absolutely going to dive into a little bit more of the paths next week. I had that written down as our week 18 show, talk about paths, because I'm a paths guy. Mike, you're a college basketball guy. You know, we root for underdogs generally when we're in the tournament, unless your team's ranked. The one year we got to experience that. You root for underdogs, and you have to look at your path. Now, think about it from the favorites perspective, the 1 seed of the tournament. You're looking at your path to the championship, right? You don't want any of those gritty, good mid-majors that you might run into early. You want more the overrated guys that have been there, not really that good, Who's that in the NFL? The Baltimore Ravens. They're just not there to me. Tennessee would be another example of teams that would kind of fit that criteria of a standard 4 or 5 seed in the tournament that you don't think is going to do anything. That's how I feel with the NFL playoffs is a tournament bracket, right? It isn't to date. It is after week 18. It turns into a tournament bracket. It doesn't matter at all who the Titans have beat. It doesn't matter at all what the Bills have done week 1 against the Rams. It matters your bracket. And I don't care what the NFC is doing that anymore. I care. I might to see, kind of who progresses, but I don't really care about how wins look. And that's what Cincinnati preyed on last year was Evan McPherson field goals, lucky bounces, the turnover battle, things that aren't necessarily really achievable things that you can keep up. So there's a lot to think about when it comes to the tournament bracket. And
Kevin,
the one thing to me,
there was 2 4 seeds in the Super Bowl last year.
right? Exactly.
I mean, it's why the smart football, the smart sports guys in general will often tell you now it's not the best teams necessarily that win the championships. It's the team that played the best at the most important times or got hot at the right time. I don't think anybody would tell you the LA Rams were the best team in football last year. They didn't have to beat the Chiefs. They didn't have to beat the Bills. They played the Bengals, which were a good team last year. Not a great team, a good team last year. And if they had played Kansas City, if they had played Buffalo, I probably would have picked both the Bills and the Chiefs by double digits over that Rams team. In the end, it doesn't matter. The Rams get the glory, and they're going to be remembered for winning it all. But in a lot of sports, especially stuff like the NCAA tournament, you will have teams that make runs that are not one of the top 5 teams in basketball, but they just found a way to get it done. Nobody's going to say St. Peter's was a top 25 basketball team last year, but they found a way to the Elite 8, taking down Kentucky early. So you're kind of spot on with this. It's possible you could have Jacksonville Jaguars go in the playoffs and be playing in the AFC Championship. You could have Tampa Bay or Carolina win a first-round game despite having a losing record. So it's about matchups. What do you do well? What do your opponents, what are their vulnerabilities? And it's going to be fun talking about this once we have a more clearer picture of what it's going to shape.
And trust me, we're going to have this topic hard, kind of to continue this conversation and with Greg Thompson about what path would you want to have going forward. The Bills need to get there first. They're already there. They're already in the dance. They're already in the top 3 seeds. Wayne, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Dispersal Jeff, you must be Smug Alpaca, if I'm going to make an assumption. And you did. You got Hurts at a really good price late in our cover 1 dispersal draft. So that's one of the, thank you, Wayne. That is part of the cover 1 Slack premium. Go ahead. We have fantasy leagues. We have a Slack channel. So make sure a great t-shirt, make sure you get up and sign up for cover 1 premium. It is amazing. One pass. It's really, and to Wayne's point, we had a dispersal draft, me and him, I believe this is Smug Alpaca, where we were the 2 new teams into the league this year, the Dynasty Cover 1 League, and he had a pretty good draft. We both ended up going pretty far as expansion teams, which was pretty cool. But anyways, second, does Burrow have any tendencies that poorly match with our defense? Sure. So you're kind of looking now, you're getting into Joe Burrow a little bit. The one thing that I like about him is his ability to find receivers. He's really good at it. He's really good at letting his players make plays safely. He kind of has that Josh Allen gunslinger in him, but at the same time, you see interceptions from Burrow. It's the same story with Patrick Mahomes. It's the same story with Josh Allen. These guys are good. They throw a lot of passes. They have weapons. They trust these weapons. They're going to turn the ball over. I'm sorry. It's not 1998 anymore. Interceptions isn't the only thing that loses you football games when you have these top-rated guys. Now, Burrow, I think, will have some challenges with the Bills' secondary and how they play. Now, it isn't a specific player. It isn't Micah Hyde, for instance, who's hurt, but it isn't a specific player. It is more how Leslie Frazier and the defensive system works and operates. And I'm interested to see, how does Burrow do against the cover 2 shell he started off struggling with to begin the year? That's what's going to be the most interesting. And the Bills run it well. The Bills do a really good job. They built this, like we say on the show all the time, Wayne. the Bills built this team to beat the Chiefs. They got sometimes by the other teams. They get got by the running, the control, the pace, the jets, the sloppiness. They can get got, or the wind of the Patriots game last year. They can get got in those situations because they're built to stop the pass. Drive one last week, I tweeted out that some DBs are struggling a little bit with their assignments, and they were, but they quickly arranged and quickly adjusted to be able to play a little bit better. And yes, it's Justin Fields. There's not much of a passing game there in general, but the Bills were able to adapt on the fly with their deep and confusing cover 2 defense, which one side of the field's playing man, the other side's in a cover 2 shell and in a zone situation. They might do a lot of mush blitzes where they're bringing certain players and dropping back others, where they're containing. So there's a lot to the Bills defense that is what makes it so good. It isn't just that, like, you look at the list and Dane Jackson struggles and you're like, he's going to blow up Dane Jackson. The Bills defense isn't Dane Jackson. He is one portion of 1/11th of who is in their zone. Commonly looks like is a weak link in that zone, but he is just 1/11th, and you'd like to see Elam in this press situation like you did against Miami. Good receivers, and I do believe that the Bills are really good. They're built to beat teams like this. The Bengals run the ball pretty poorly. Mixon's has less yards and production than Devin Singletary. He's good. I'm not overly concerned with the Bengals running game. The Bills stopped Justin Fields to his lowest last week and are really good against the run when they want to be. Now, they didn't mind Miami running the ball. Maybe they go to a similar game plan this week to slow down the Bengals passing attack. They will let Mixon run. That's just an example of what I have in my mind of what Leslie Frazier might do, because they quite frankly don't think that Mixon can beat the Buffalo Bills. They think that the passing game of the Cincinnati Bengals could beat the Buffalo Bills. So Burrow does have really good tendencies. He finds zones. He's gotten better, obviously, since the start. He is kind of like Josh Allen. He'll get baited into an interception at times. And it is on the Bills to arrive and tackle, or it's going to be a long day. Great play by New England's defense to knock the ball out late against Chase. That is what you need to win. And the Patriots defense did that. They played really great in the second half. I watched some film on that. And that the way that they baited him to throw to Chase, knocked the ball out, and should have won, but their offense is incompetent, in my opinion, in New England. So with all that being said, yes, Burrow has enough tendencies that match poorly with the Bills defense in terms of both ways, though. Match poorly for him and also match poorly for the Bills defense. So we'll see how that looks. I'm interested to see if he is going to find the soft spots. Is he going to take what the Bills give him? The Bills are going to play coverage. And now with the right tackle being out, we'll see. The Bills D-line's been pretty good this year. AJ Epinesa has been getting after it. Greg Rousseau is one of the better defensive ends in the league, in my opinion. The Bills have been pretty good, and now they've been good interior-wise, too, on the interior defensive line, Mike. So there is a lot to enjoy about what the defense has done. And we keep dogging it. We keep thinking the defense is poor. It's poor. It's poor. It's fourth DVOA. It got better lately, and they're just sitting there as one of the better defenses in the league that no one wants to talk about, being number 2 with points against. They really do buckle down in the red zone.
Yeah, I think it's easy to dog this defense because they don't have Von Miller anymore. They don't have Micah Hyde, and they lack the big name superstars outside of Jordan Poyer. But this defense has talent all throughout. Even with Trey not being the same version of him that we're accustomed to, it's still a great defensive line. It's still one of the better linebacking cores in the league. And when you got Jordan Poyer, you got Trey, you still got some good guys in the secondary. And what's going to be interesting to me with Cincinnati is how did the Bills contain their star wideouts? Obviously, Jamar Chase is a freak. The things he can do on a football field are special. But then you have T. Higgins, you have Boyd. That's 3 guys. So the Bills, they've struggled against number 1 wide receivers, slowing them down this year, but they've actually been pretty solid containing number 2 and number 3 wideouts. So is there going to be a guy that the Bills basically let be the guy that, obviously you don't want to have anybody exploit you, but will they say, we'll let you have some of yours, but we're going to try to shut down the rest of this offense? And then you look at Burrow, like you said, he's going to make mistakes every once in a while. That's what happens when you throw the ball as much as he does. But he is a special talent. There was a time when he was coming out of LSU and we were coming out of the second year of Josh Allen after the 2019 season, where I actually said prior to that draft that I would trade Josh Allen straight up for the number 1 overall pick to take Joe Burrow. Now, I wouldn't make that trade today because I obviously love Josh Allen and he's been tremendous for the Bills, but I had that much conviction in Joe Burrow that he was going to be a superstar. The guy is in the top interval of intelligence of any quarterback I've ever seen. I know player comparisons are bad, but I always think of Peyton Manning when I think of Joe Burrow. I think of a guy that dissects a defense. He already knows what's happening before he takes that snap. He knows exactly where the football needs to go, and he has the accuracy to put it there. And when you have these guys, they're top 3 receivers, and you know you can just throw it up and they'll make plays for you, that's something it's almost a cheat code. It's something that Buffalo really doesn't have for the most part outside of Stephon Diggs, where you have wide receivers that elevate the quarterback. Burrow can make these throws and not fear the consequences because he knows worst case scenario, they'll just bat the ball down. And Buffalo hasn't really had that fortune this year. So as far as this game, I don't know how the Bills will contain Burrow, but it does seem like the Bengals can sometimes be all boom or bust, where they kind of are dependent on explosive plays. And when they're not coming easily to them, they can get frustrated. They can have some series that don't end up going as strong. So when we're looking at this matchup, I feel like all year Bills fans have been slightly underwhelmed by the Bills offense, despite the fact that DVOA and most of the traditional stats, in addition to that, think the Bills offense is very solid. But when we think about Cincinnati, we'd be like, oh my God, they're tremendous. Well, when you look at the DVOAs, when you look at the metrics, the Bills offense is actually better than what the Cincinnati offense is. So it is kind of interesting. I wouldn't think that off the top of my head before looking at the numbers. But like you said, Devin Singletary is comparable to Mixon. In fact, you look at what the Bills get in their rushing game from Josh Allen and then James Cook now, and you could make an argument that the Bills rush game isn't that far behind the Bengals rush game, even though DVOA would say the Bengals have a slight advantage there. The real, when you're looking at everything, the real thing that the Bills have an advantage over Cincinnati, if you're looking at the advanced metrics, is the Bills defense is considered better. That's the one real difference when you break it down. The Bengals defense is around middle of the pack, and the Bills defense is considered elite. So are the Bills going to be able to get pressure on Joe? That is probably going to be the difference in this game with the Bengals missing the right tackle. Are they going to be able to get to him? Because even though Burrow has some mobility, he can be a statue in the pocket at times. Early in the year, that was a problem. He's corrected it, and now they've taken off. And last thing I want to say, Kevin, because I know this is a long-winded answer. Since Von Miller has left with his injury, the Bills' win rates have actually gone down slightly. Rousseau has gone down a little over 1%. Ed Oliver, with Von Miller off the field, has gone down about 3.5%, 3% overall. AJ Epineza is the one player that's actually gone up a little bit, and now he's up to 6.5 sacks on the season, which is a surprise to a lot of people. So what Bills pass rush are we going to see on Monday night? If we can see them get to Burrow, get in his face, cause some poorly timed throws, the Bills could give the Bengals problem. But if Burrow has all the time in the world to throw, it could be a long day for the Bills defense.
So all the DVOA metrics do match up well for the Bills. Obviously, their defense has been in good shape all season. Number 7 against the pass. They're actually number 3 against the run. Total unadjusted is 5th. Limited variance, meaning there's really no luck there. Schedule's 3rd toughest. They play the 3rd toughest set of offenses in the league. Only down to the Jets, who have to play the Bills twice, is the reason that they're probably ranked higher than the Bills. So the Bills aren't playing cupcakes. Yes, they got Chicago last week, still a dominant run game, and the Bills got better DVOA against the run. So and they played that well. And that's why, like we talked about to start the show, love a team like Baltimore early on in the playoff system here.
And let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. And I want to tackle RJ's in a second.
Yeah, because I do want to get to that. Have you ever seen a Bills team, because I'm sure this happens with other teams across the NFL, that has had a record as good as they have right now, with the metrics saying they're the best team in the NFL, with the metrics saying they have a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. The strength of victory is the tops in the NFL. Their strength of schedule is among the tops in the NFL. And yet we still have fans doubting what they're seeing. It's contrast to so many years of when the Bills sucked and fans wanted to see every little positive thing. It doesn't line up. And the only thing I can think of is, with all the Super Bowl hype before the season,
that's right,
fans are seeing some of the vulnerabilities that every team across the league has, and we are heightening them to a level that is not realistic. And I think it's a fear mechanism, because we all started believing it's Super Bowl or bust. Even at the best, it was never Super Bowl or bust. Right now, you might have a 20% chance, 15-20% chance. And that's even if you're the top seed in the AFC. So I do think there's some PTSD with the fan base after the last 2 playoff losses, because everything points to this being a good team. I'm not saying they're going to even get past the first round if they lose to Cincy, but everything, my eye test, the metrics, I don't know why everybody is so afraid.
Right. Now, answer your question quickly. It's because of guys like Nick Wright. And we all like to act like we don't care. Nick Wright's a troll. He's a clown. We don't like him. He's garbage. He just likes to troll for clicks. But we do, though. We listen to something like that, where I've seen the statistics since week 6. The Bills were dominant till week 6. They were beside the weather game of Miami. And one of the best rebuttals, guys, by the way, is anyone ever asks you about, like, oh, all you do is complain about the sun. Just tell them, let's switch sidelines for each game. 1 in Buffalo, 1 in Miami. We'll switch sidelines then. Shouldn't be a big deal. Let's just switch sidelines, each team, each city. We'll go with it. It's not a big deal. We'll both switch, and we'll go that route. So for me, I think a matter of, beside that loss to Miami, you were getting some dominant victories. They were taking care of business. They took care of KC, picked off Patrick Mahomes to end the game. Josh had looked pretty good. Then goes on to get hurt, and we know what happened from there. But because we listen to people like Nick Wright and others on Twitter, whether Bills fan or not, say things like he's only 26th in the league and Josh Allen was the reason the Bills were going to win. I'm a quarterback wins guy. I do think it matters. I think this team is 3 or 4 games, 5 games worse without Josh Allen, period. They played him hurt over playing Case Keenum. That should be everything anyone needs to know about what people think about quarterbacks winning football games. And it isn't just a team stat. It is, there's some team element, but it is quarterbacks do matter in terms of quarterback wins. Now we'll get into that in the offseason a little bit more, or it was a good offseason topic. But when it comes to what happens, we're listening to that. 26th in the league here, only 9th in the league in passing touchdowns, 15th in the league in yards, 23rd in yards per attempt, whatever snippet we want to take for during his injured stretch, in the weather stretch, and we're going to extrapolate it, and we're going to say he's been poor. Now, good. That's not bad to me, because they're winning these games that they were losing in the past. That's a positive sign that that should be a positive sign for anyone who says, well, no, it's a team stat. Wins are a team stat. This shows that it is a team stat, that the Bills are able to dominate and win in defense and find the ways to run. And the Bills have found their running game. Nick Wright mysteriously forgot all of Josh Allen's rushing stats. He is the best dual threat quarterback in the NFL. The best. Is he the best runner in the NFL? No, he's 3rd or 4th. Is he the best passer in the NFL? No, he's 3rd or 4th. He is, just like DVOA, he is the best dual threat quarterback in the NFL, and approaching history, the best dual threat. When he's in trouble and other teams panic, he can run the ball for 30 yards like he did against Miami. He is that good. Okay. So that's what you got to remember about Josh Allen. He is the only, and he's going to do it twice, to have 4,000 plus yards and 750 plus yards running the ball. That is not normal. That is the best dual threat quarterback ever to play in the NFL to this date. That doesn't mean he's the number one runner. Being the number one runner doesn't make you the best dual threat quarterback. being really good throwing the ball and one of the best runner. You're the best dual threat quarterback to ever play this sport, and we'll see if that comes true in 10 years. Now, to RJ's question, they're a big play offense, right? So I'm going to read a quote here from Burrow himself, not Kevin. Playing against defenses, it's give and take. We think if we start running the ball a little bit better, that will open it up and teams will have to get out of this Tampa 2 shell. The first half, we were in 1st and 15 like every series. So we're going to have to get third down defense, and it's going to be tough to convert in behind the stick. So we got to eliminate those early penalties and start running the ball better. Stay on track for the chains, and we'll be able to take more shots and stop struggling against cover 2. Guess what the Bills are good in? That exact thing. So that's a direct quote from him himself. They're trying to make big plays. It's the same thing you might knock Josh Allen for. And for some reason, he's the one that gets it on the chin the most. Patrick Mahomes a little bit occasionally. Tua gets some issues, but he's more conservative. It's Josh Allen takes the brunt of the struggles that quarterbacks have with cover 2. He's making big plays. He's pressing into double coverage. There's no reason for Josh to throw that ball to Isaiah McKenzie against the Bears. There just really wasn't. But he's trying to make a big play in that situation. Against the Bears, he thought he had a look. He missed the shell, the dropping corner. So he didn't make the right read. But that is what this defense does. Bills are really good at it. And the Bengals have gotten better in these situations than they were. Obviously, they had a pretty poor start against, and they just still historically cover against Tampa 2 coverage. And that's what the Bills are built around. The Bills are built around beating these type of teams, and even more so than a team like Tennessee or New England still being able to get them on the ground. You're going to see the Bills, quite frankly, allowing them to run the ball, and it's going to be annoying, Mike. And
Kev, it's one of those things where, yes, we do get annoyed when another team runs it all over the Bills. But you know what? I'd rather be annoyed while allowing 20 points than be annoyed because we allowed 35 and lost a shootout 35-32. And like you said, it is how you build a defense now. You build defense to stop the powerhouse offenses. And what do the powerhouse offenses do? They throw the ball, and they throw it a lot. And to your point, really running for teams like Cincinnati, Kansas City, Buffalo, it's really a tempo thing. Sometimes you're trying to kill some clock, and then sometimes you're just trying to keep teams honest so you can go back to throwing the ball. In Buffalo's case, a little bit different because some of these cold weather, bad condition games, you do need to lean on the running the ball a little bit more. But overall, like you said, the Bills are built to attack teams like what Cincinnati is going to do. Now, does that mean the Bills are going to contain them? I have no clue. They could allow 40 points. They could allow 17 points. But normally when we watch the Bills, we go into a game and we're like, oh my God, they're going to struggle against these 3 star wideouts. And then at the end of the day, the star wideouts will combine for 150 yards. And we're going to be like, how did the Bills shut them down? Well, because each game is a specific matchup. And you can't take too much away from your previous games because you don't know what the Bills are keeping for later matchups. You don't know what they're holding back on. I'm confident the Bills are going to have a solid game plan going against Cincinnati. Is this going to be a shootout? I have a feeling it's not going to be one of those 35-32 games. These are normally those games where you expect it to be a high-scoring, high-flying game, and then it normally ends up being 24-21 or something like that. So it's going to be interesting how it does play, because when you do list the matchups, it doesn't sound good for the Bills, but that's why it's all about scheming and figuring everything out.
Yeah, and it isn't going to be Elam versus Higgins, White versus Chase. The Bills run a cover 2 defense. So you're going to cover certain portions and certain confusing portions of the field for the receivers, right? Yes, the lineup, yes, that player might come into that zone, but that's not how the Bills traditionally play man-to-man coverage. And to kind of complete kind of the whole gamut of the Bengals season, the Bengals saw less coverage and wins over the Dolphins and the Jets, is a note that I had. And they went to man-to-man. Cincinnati didn't call a single run against the Jets when they were in cover 2. And they only ran a couple of times out of it against the Dolphins for a total of 10 yards. So these teams are late in the middle of the year weren't following kind of the plan that the Bengals were struggling against. And it didn't include a lot of cover 2. And Burrow then goes on to mention that in the first win of the season, I believe week 3, mentioned that getting ahead early allowed the offense to do more to push the ball downfield, what they want to be doing as the tendencies of the Bengals. And after the Miami Dolphins victory, he said, the Dolphins played a lot of man coverage, which was a bold strategy against my receivers, and it allowed him to hit on deeper shots. So guess what? The man coverage thing might not be what the Bills are going to go to, which would lead, unfortunately, to maybe the Bills thinking that Dane Jackson plays his zone better than other corners on the roster. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't. I mean, I'd like to see Elam in the game always, but I don't know that Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier are going to agree with us that that's the right move. They want the most zone veteran guy that they have, and it might be Dane Jackson in this specific game. So it's certainly not Chase versus White, Higgins versus them, Taron Johnson versus Tyler Boyd. Yes, those players will go into zones and possibly play man-to-man in certain confusing situations that the Bills do show tendency to do on one side of the field, like the interception against Mahomes. He was in a zone on one side and a man-to-man in the other, and he read the wrong side of the field and threw an interception into the zone side. So there are going to be confusing elements to that all day, but specifically the Ravens went, and this is the game that I watched specifically, Ravens Bengals. In the first game, Ravens won. So following a couple of those Bengals wins, the Ravens then were like, no, we're going to play cover 2. I don't know what these teams are doing playing this heavy man-to-man stuff. Ravens played a 2-high heavy scheme exclusively. Obviously, the Bengals only scored 17 points and dropped to 2 and 3. And then Burrow mentions how soft the Ravens were playing, forcing them to go short. And still Burrow was struggling. And they took away all of our deep shots. So they were really soft, and they were giving a lot of zone looks, and the Bengals offense really struggled against that specifically to go. So against average formation widths, so further away from the line of scrimmage, softer boxes, the Bengals struggle. So they struggle mightily with soft boxes per some advanced statistics. So that's what you're going to see. And I would be shocked if the Bills go away from that, Mike, and play some man-heavy system that you're going to see. And weeks 5 to 7, the Bengals are ranked 27th at running against the soft box. So we'll see how that turns out to be. So there's a lot that goes into how you would defend a really good pass offense. But I think the one thing that the Bills specifically have figured out is that, especially lately after the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, when they're like, we have to correct that portion of the game. And then they go and lose to it again in the division round last year. And the Bills are still retooling it, but they've been pretty good against pass-happy teams, minus Jacoby Brissett late in the game and a couple of and Justin Jefferson when they lost some injuries in that game. Outside of a few small instances in little chunks, the Bills have been pretty good covering the pass, Mike. So ultimately, there are those warts. It is actually worse than their run defense. But I do believe that the Bills will have a plan about how to stop this high-powered offense. And it isn't man-to-man. It isn't Boyd versus Taron Johnson. It isn't Chase versus Trey White. There is nuance, and there is multiple people that are involved with how you cover someone like Jamar Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that we haven't even talked about so far is how is the Bengals defense going to stop the Bills offense? So we can be scared all day about Joe Burrow and their weapons, but the Bengals have a huge test in front of them stopping the Bills offense. And like I said earlier in the show, it's 12-3 right now with a huge point differential in 3 losses by a combined 8 points. And in hindsight, you're like, how did we lose to the Minnesota Vikings? How did we lose to the Miami Dolphins? And even the Jets game, all of those games could have been victories. So yeah, it's one of those things where the Bills are the better team on paper going into this matchup. And Josh just has to not have some of those costly mistakes that we've seen a little bit too often this year. It seems like the only thing stopping the Bills for the most part is themselves. And a lot of people are going to talk about the turnovers that Josh has this year, but when you are aggressive and you take chances, it's going to happen. And a lot of Josh's aggressiveness is what leads to some of the magical plays that he also does. on a weekly basis. Now, in this game, it's gonna be difficult for Cincinnati to limit the Bills' offense in this matchup. And I think something that's been really encouraging to me in recent weeks is that I think the Bills now are starting to get the balance that they had at the end of last year that really made them unstoppable. And when I say balance, and I've mentioned this during shows in the offseason, I'm not talking about 50-50 run pass. I could give a crap about that. I still want the Bills passing it during the bad weather because I know their opponents aren't going to. And Josh can still get things done when their opponents simply can't go to there. The balance I'm talking about is when you need to run the ball for 2 yards, being able to get that push and get that first down. And it was a big part last year after the Patriots lost where they started focusing on the run, focusing on playing December football. And by the time they got to the Patriots playoff game and the Kansas City playoff game, the offense was just cooking on all levels. And yesterday against the Bears, I know Saturday against the Bears, I know Chicago has a horrible run defense, but they had no answers for the Bills.
No.
Cook was on fire. Singletary was on fire. Both of them should have had 100 yards. I know Cook was a yard short, but this comes after another good running game a couple weeks earlier. And we've been hammering the Bills' run game all season, and some of it rightly deserved, but they're the only team that's run for over 100 yards in every game this season. For some reason, people don't like to count quarterback rush yards for the running game when it includes the Buffalo Bills, but when it's Justin Fields rushing for 1,000 yards or Lamar Jackson rushing for 1,000 yards, we talk about how great those teams are at running the ball. But when Josh Allen runs for 740 plus yards through 15 games, it doesn't count for the Bills. And you look at the yards per carry. James Cook is at 5.8 yards per carry. Allen is at 6.5 or somewhere around there, and even Singletary is around 5 yards per carry. So this team knows that when it comes to this time of the year, you got to get it done in a bunch of different ways. And even though Allen has made some mistakes in the air, when they put that threat in you where they have an answer to almost anything that they're going to see, it's going to be tough for teams to keep up with this Bills offense when they're playing like this in the cold weather. Because granted, take whatever you want about weather. How much does it really limit teams? The Bills have an answer to attack whatever you present at them. The question always with Buffalo is execution, and are they going to make mistakes that get in their own way? When the Bills play clean football and avoid just the stupid mistakes and undisciplined errors, they are the best team in the NFL. You see other teams that will lose games because they just simply weren't the better team or they had some vulnerabilities. The Bills, when they lose games, most of the time it's because something stupid that they did to themselves. So is Cincinnati on that level? I'm not quite sure Cincinnati is there. Cincinnati's close, but I don't think Cincinnati's a team that is unbeatable when they're clicking. They're still beatable. The question is, what version are you going to see of them?
Right. And what's interesting about the Bills, they are 16-4 in their last 20 games since the aforementioned stretch of that win football game you brought up. 16-4. Their 4 losses, 13 seconds. The ridiculous Vikings game, the Dolphins weather and injury game, and the Jets game. Those are their only 4 losses in their last 20 games. It isn't a situation to where that's good. I mean, 80% win percentage. You get things done. And we all have criticisms, myself included. My game day feed probably airs more negative, but it's only because I expect this team to win the Super Bowl. Special teams last week wasn't Super Bowl winning special teams. Their DVOA actually dipped. I'm glad I feel vindicated. It went from 3rd to 7th. It was poor. And it's been poor against Miami. I need that to stop because you're going to lose teams like Cincinnati and everyone's like, well, the special teams didn't cost them today. That's not the point. Did I think it would necessarily give them a fat L against the Bears? No. It's that they play in Cincinnati this week. Could give them a fat L. and the playoffs. I need to see the special teams not make those blunders. It goes from Bass, and that was a weather thing, hopefully, to return coverage and other issues on the special teams unit.
It's been a few weeks now. I mean, Miami, the
Yep.
roughing the
Holdings,
punter,
roughing the punter. Yep.
There was a good kick return by the Dolphins early in the game. And
Yep.
I'll just throw this at you and see what you think of it. Sometimes I wonder, and not the special teams mistakes, but sometimes I wonder if some of the undisciplined or poor mistakes that the Bills make are almost a little bit of arrogance, where they're so good that they're not worried about a mistake here or there costing them a football game, where Josh makes that throw to Isaiah McKenzie, not noticing Kyler Gordon, and throws it into double coverage in a 20-mile-per-hour wind, thinking, what the heck, we're going to find a way to score a lot more times in this ball game. And I almost wonder if that's a possibility. They would never say that, because you'd come across as very arrogant and almost not respecting your opponent if you ever admitted that. But you see when Josh is in the playoffs, a different version of him. When we've seen him last year against Kansas City, and then the game before when the Bills went 7 for 7 against the Patriots, Josh was almost unstoppable. You weren't seeing him force balls into bad windows. You weren't seeing him make dumb mistakes. The Bills were focused. They were playing confident. And I almost wonder if we see a different version of them in the playoffs because of that mindset. Obviously, the defense couldn't hold it off, but when Nick Wright brings up the regular season turnovers, I'm one not to even really think about it too much, because how many of those turnovers were critical? How many of them were crucial? Obviously, we know turnovers cost them in all three
the
of
Vikings
the
game.
But over the course of a season, they can get away with turnovers most of the time. And it's
because he's
elite,
elite,
right? He picks stats that he knows are going to back up his point. Nick Wright knows that the Bills are a formidable opponent, that they're one of the top teams in the NFL. But he's also a Kansas City Chiefs fan that loves just getting that reaction from his opposing fan base, just like Bills fans.
Yeah, they do
go on Twitter, and we like to talk crap with the Dolphins. We like to talk crap with the Jets or the Patriots. It's just having fun with it. And I will say this about Nick Wright. I actually do think he's a highly intelligent, smart person. He wouldn't have gotten to where he is without being so. I know, like, some of these guys like Colin Cowherd and stuff like that, they troll. I think if you had a genuine conversation with Nick Wright, man-to-man, off camera, he would acknowledge that Josh Allen is an elite quarterback, that he respects him, and that he's a legitimate threat. But you got to get paid, and you got to pay the bills. And sometimes that leads to you saying stuff on air that you might not believe off camera. But if it gets the clicks, if it gets the eyeballs, at the end of the day, you're doing your job.
Right. Allen shines in primetime. The only primetime game he's lost in the last 2 years since the New England win game is 13 seconds. He absolutely dominates when the eyes are on him. He's very good in these situations. It's 1 o'clock. I've always said back to Jacksonville last year that sometimes you can get got. These primetime games when the lights are on him and the Nick Wrights are talking and everything else is going on, he's dominant. He's
all
super
the
good.
1 o'clock.
Yep. All the losses at 1 o'clock. It's these primetime games when a lot's on, and when limited on the line, he tends to scale back. The less that's on the line, the more you can get him. And I think that that's true of any natural competitor that needs a huge stakes this week. I don't anticipate any of those issues as you get it going on against the Bengals on Monday Night Football. So there's just a lot to kind of break into this performance, and I do believe that the Bills are going to come in with a really good defensive game plan, as they do. I liked someone earlier say about the Rams game plan offensively. I think that that's right. I think you're looking to limit Burrow on the field, but at the same time, you have an offense that doesn't need to do that. You should be able to keep up. You should be able to play whatever the game is going to dictate. If it is a drive situation, how good they are off script, how good Josh Allen is in 2 minutes, how good he is at the end of the games. That's amazing to see. He could have a terrible second quarter, which they've been good in the second quarter. He could have a terrible first quarter. He can struggle in the third. But that last drive, whether it was a game that they've struggled in or not, he knows how to control the game, to control the script, and do what he needs to do to get it done. And he's done it in every single game, minus the Jets game where he got sacked, got hurt, and still almost hit Davis deep to bring them in field goal range. He's done it in every other game that's been needed, that they've been down, tied, and then obviously they're 6-3 in the one-score games. That's kind of corrected itself lately too. So, Mike, we're coming up on 8:40. We know we had a late start. We really appreciate everyone tuning in for this hour. And I was 3 points away from my score prediction last week. I need to see score predictions as we get into this. The Bills are a lot on the line. The Bengals, a lot on the line. Division, stuff like that. They still need to win next week. But, Mike, let's hear what your prediction is this week.
And I'm going to get to my prediction in 1 minute. But first, Greg Thompson has a quick special message.
We have to wait for
Hey
Mike.
guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between 2 exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code COVER1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
Now, you can ask me, did I play that promo right there because we're an hour in and I just realized we hadn't played it yet? Or was I trying to buy some time to come up with a prediction because I hadn't thought about it yet? And both of those are technically true. So I am going to go Bills 27-24. I feel good. I think Buffalo's going to find an answer to contain the Bengals, not stop them, contain them. And in the end, Josh is going to make enough plays. The Bills are going to get one step closer to clinching that 1 seed, heading into the final week of the season, needing that win against New England.
Yeah, throw your predictions, whether live, if you're on demand, throw them on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Please smash the like button. That means so much to us. Please, 5 stars. I'm going to pick someone to give away a signed card to. 5 stars on Apple Podcast. Please smash that like button. Put your score predictions in. I'm feeling generous this holiday season. Anyone who gets closest on the score prediction, I might have a special surprise. So whether you're on demand live or not, put your score predictions on our YouTube channel right underneath this video. Because I'm going to do this probably weekly from now on. I'm going to select a winner. I have the Bills winning this game. I had the Bills winning this game all season. I can't change my prediction now, even though I predicted 4 losses this year. So I don't know. I needed them to get to the 4th, but it's not going to be now. I do believe that the Bills take care of business. I have them 31-20. It's a score prediction that I've had in my head from the start of this show. And that's where I'm going to lean. I think the Bills defense causes 2 field goals that are going to come back and haunt the Bengals late in this game. And they will get enough to get it done. The pass rush is going to show up against the first time the Bengals have had to use a new O-line all year. How lucky is that? 1 combination this season. They're going to have to go to their 2nd this week, and it's going to cause them fits for an O-line that's decent to average, that has historically been bad. We're going to make a move, and the Bengals struggled mixing and matching last week when that happened. So we're going to see. I have the Bills taking care of this by 11 points, much covering the spread and the over. So, Mike, from the Going Deep podcast, we appreciate everybody tuning in here over the last hour. Thank you so much for our new time. We were hoping maybe a guest would come on. So we had some changes in the schedule and the weather throwing everything off. So we'll be back at you with our normal time slot to talk about this game specifically, maybe a little bit about the Patriots, but we're going to do more of a review next week of this game as it's really big. And it will be the night after the game next week, as Monday night. Our show's Tuesday at 7. So tune in here to the Going Deep podcast, always from the Cover One podcast network, the best network in all of Bills fandom. So we really appreciate everyone tuning in. We hope everybody has a great new year. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday at 7. And we hope that everyone enjoys this new year and hopefully a locking of at least the 2 seed with a victory and well on their way to the 1 seed with a victory. So we'll see you guys here next Tuesday at 7.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
we're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship. While I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown. Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown. Play action.